All right, let's get into the Eagles and the Vikings and get the matchups to watch and everything else on week number 5 of the NFL. KC Joyner, ESPN.com. Senior NFL insider joins us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as we get ready for Eagles and Vikings. Casey, welcome back.
Hey, I love all that hockey talk.
Yeah, man. I was up late. Flyers had a little Vegas 10-10 start and kept me up to about 1:06. I think I finally put my head on the pillow last night.
Hey, it's good. It's time well spent.
All right, everybody will be watching the 425. It's America's Game of the Week, Eagles and Vikings. First off, Minnesota. What's going on with this team? NFC Championship game just 1 year ago. They've fallen apart. I mean, our Eagles guy, John McMullen, says, look, they're just not that good. We're just looking at them at who they were last year. They're not the same team. Is he right?
He is. I've been pitching this since last year. I know I probably said this a few times on the show last year that Minnesota, when you start looking at the advanced metrics, you go, okay, you're winning in spite of good advanced metrics. Some teams like the Rams or something, their offense does well. It's because they're that good. And the Vikings, they tend to do situational things well. But talent-wise, they're not doing very well. I'll give you an example. In pass rushing, they're supposed to have this great pass rush. They're 17th in my pass rushing metrics this year. They're average. They're nothing special, and their run blocking has been atrocious. It's just been awful this year. So if you can't rush the passer and you can't run, you can't play Zimmer football.
Yeah, and is it personnel? I mean, they've got a lot of talent on that team. So is it personnel? Is it his scheme? I know they got some injury issues, and you got the one, Everson Griffin is out with the problems that he's having. So that's a big loss for them.
Griffin, him being out, I think, honestly, it's a matter of them having been overrated last year because certain teams will just, again, they do certain situational things well, and they're the sort of team, I talk frequently about how Philadelphia in the past, they'll allow a high good or low good blocking rate, so you're not going to get many big runs, but when you get a big run, it's going to be 9 or 10 yards on average. Well, Minnesota's the type of team that they had plenty of talent out in secondary, so their cornerbacks can, if you do hit a play, if you're in their pass rushes and getting there, they can keep you from getting completion. If they get a good running play, their safeties can come up and make sure that the running play doesn't go for a big gain. They can do things like that so they can limit the impact of their weaknesses. But this year they haven't been able to do that, and they're having to be more of a pass-first team, and that's not what they do well.
Let me look at the Vikings defense against this Eagles offense, though. The Eagles offense has been struggling a little bit to score. They haven't had the big play. They got Alshon back. So when you look at Philly's offense as is right now and look at that Viking defense, what do you like?
What I don't like is Philadelphia's pass blocking. They rank 16th in the league in pass blocking, or 16th in my pass blocking grades. So and if I look at their matchup this week, even because they've got that ranking, they've got a mid-tier ranking in what I call pass blocking differential. It's just a way of measuring how favorable your matchup is. I cover these things in my ESPN Fantasy Football Insider article every Wednesday. I look at blocking matchups from a fantasy perspective. But Philadelphia, it's a mid-tier advantage there. That offensive line for Philadelphia, given the way Minnesota hasn't been rushing the pass for a while, you would think that they should have a significant edge there, or at least an edge, and they should be ahead there. And they're just not pass blocking to that extent, and they're not playing to their talent level. So it's one of those situations where if I'm Philly, I'm going, okay, maybe I can't lean on the pass as much as I want to. And plus, if I'm them, I don't want to get into a shootout game because Minnesota has better wide receivers than they do. So if I'm Philadelphia, I want to lean more on the ground game in this one.
All right, so possibly run the ball. Jay Ajayi, by the way, 15 for 70 last week. You had Smallwood 5 for 39. They did run the ball pretty well last week. They just didn't continue to do that. If they are to throw the ball, what are they up against?
They're up against a really tough secondary. Personnel-wise, when you're going by each player, you're grading individual matchups. They don't rank very well. I don't like Ertz versus Sendejo. And mind you, Ertz is obviously an elite caliber tight end, but Sendejo is very good at shutting down tight ends. And Harrison Smith, even though their deep coverage has not been as good as it's been in past years, we've seen some of the big plays he gave up against the Rams, they're not as good. He's still arguably the best free safety in the game. You've got Rhodes, you've got You got Mackenzie Alexander's been pretty solid at nickel. So, I mean, this is not a group of cornerbacks who I think you can go ahead and target. And don't look at what happened against the Rams as par for the course for that team, because the Rams have an offense that could do that to anybody. This is a group where, we're given the pass rush lack of advantage there and what they've got in the secondary. I don't want to – if the Eagles throw more than 30 times, they're playing Minnesota's game.
Yeah, and the receivers for the Eagles, Alshon had a nice week last week. What about – we talk about it weekly. Let's go to Ertz in the tight end spot here, because that seems to be the guy that Carson Wentz wants to go to. So will there be yards and catches to be had for Zach Ertz this week?
We talk every week about the fact that he's probably the second best receiver on the club, so you kind of have to go after you have to go to him just from a talent perspective. Although you've got Aguilar now, you've got some. You can make a case that he's still the second best, but you can make a case that you don't have to throw quite as often to them. But when you start looking at the Vikings and what they're allowing to tight end this year, 16 catches, 246 yards, and a touchdown. They've allowed fewer than 50 yards to tight ends in 2 games this year. Although they gave up 99 against Green Bay and 90 against San Francisco, and Green Bay and San Francisco pretty solid tight ends. So I would think that's more what they would look like. 5 to 7 receptions for Ertz, maybe 75, 100 yards along those lines. Should be a pretty good game for him if they can do that well. But I don't think it's going to be one of those games where you can be sending him 10 and 15 targets. It's just not the matchup to do that.
Okay, let's flip it around and look at the Eagles' defense here. We know they have a pass rush. Minnesota's offensive line. I got 3 guys in the room. You're on the phone. I think we can find a 5th. Are we better?
We might be. Minnesota is 29th in my overall blocking metrics right now. And they have the 30th when I mentioned that differential, what the favorable matchup is. They're of this week. There's only 30 teams playing. They're last. They're the 30th ranked team in differential. They're doing a horrible job in run blocking. Their run blocking metrics are atrocious. They grade it as an F. Actually, only Seattle rates worse in run blocking this year. Minnesota cannot move the ball on the ground at all. They don't have Cook. He's probably going to be out. I don't think he's been officially ruled out, but he didn't practice this week, so he's likely out. Murray's so-so, and they don't have anybody behind him. So Minnesota's having to go to this pass-first team, and this is not a good matchup for them from a pass blocking perspective either, because Minnesota or Philadelphia has a solid pass rush. They're not doing as great as they're capable of. They've done good this year, but Minnesota's pass blocking ranks 23rd in the league. So right now they've got the 23rd ranked matchup in pass blocking too. So I think Philadelphia is going to be able to get some pass rush on them and going to be able to run the ball well too. I think that Philadelphia's got some pretty good edges here.
All right, we got the secondary of the Eagles, Mills. A lot of people calling for him to get moved to safety or out of the lineup altogether. They've been getting beat a lot. Corey Graham struggled in the safety spot. Avonte Maddox has gotten reps there. They're up against Diggs and Thielen. A little bit better than Corey Davis and whoever else the Tennessee Titans were throwing at you last week. So is Kirk Cousins and this wide receiving core, do they have some wide eyes for Sunday?
I'm giving them everything underneath. I'm playing 9 yards off all the time. I'll give them, you want to take hitch routes all day? We'll let you throw hitch routes all day. If I'm Philadelphia, I'm not doing anything to let them get deep on it. I'm going to play shell coverage all day long because Mills have been getting beat, but they've also been making mental errors. That's what really troubles more than anything else. They're getting beat physically, but they're also making the mental errors. And Minnesota's got a type of passing game that if you make mental errors, they'll make you make more of them. So, because, they made the Rams defense, which is a really talented defense, and is probably better talent-wise than Philadelphia. Even if they both play to their talent level, the Rams are probably a little bit better, and I know they were banged up a bit in the secondary, but even if you account for all that, they made that group look ridiculous just because they're beating them both physically and they're beating them mentally. So if I'm Philadelphia, if they want to throw the football, fine. You're going to throw a bunch of dink and dunk throws, and we're going to hope we can come up and get a fumble or tip passes, things of that nature. I just do not want to give you long passes.
Yeah, this is like Gorilla Monsoon, the immovable force against the biggest object here. The Eagles' pass rush against this terrible offensive line, like we talked about. So is Cousins going to have enough time to take advantage of that weakness? Although I completely just Gorilla Monsoon's rolling in his grave at what I just did.
Yeah, stick a fork in him, right? If I'm Minnesota or if I'm Philadelphia, I want to rush Cousins as much as I can. And Cousins, he's done over the years, he's been hit and miss in the metric I have called bad decision rate. It measures how often the quarterback makes a mental error that leads to turnover opportunities for the other team. He will. You can bait him into making mistakes. He's gotten better at it, but you can still bait him into making mistakes. He'll misread coverages. He'll I think he thinks his arm is stronger than it is, so he'll tend to force passes into coverage in areas where somebody with a gun for an arm could get it in there, but he can't. So I think you could do those things, and I think Philadelphia needs to be looking for ball hawking and doing things with. I don't know if they need to do a lot of blitzing, but just make him think about the pass rush as much as you can, because I think they can get to the quarterback more than they have, given Minnesota ranking 23rd in those pass blocking metrics. But I think they also just need to be making him think about it, because if they can just generate a couple, 3-4 sacks there with their pass rush and get him to make a mistake or two, that's enough big plays to make the difference.
All right. When you look at the Eagles on that defensive side of the ball, we've been debating this all week. There's a disconnect in the room here. You got the Eagles on the road last week. They had a couple chances to get off the field, which we chronicled on Monday a lot. The last year, they gave up 13 points a game. In their last 18 games at home, Doug Peterson, they gave up 13 points a game. They're 6-11 on the road in that same time frame. They give up 26 points a game. Is it as simple as they're just a better home defense, or are there signs to you that this defense is starting to slip, whether the game is in Philadelphia or any other city in the National Football League?
They're not slipping in run defense, I can tell you that, because right now, through 4 weeks, Philadelphia has the highest graded run defense according to my advanced run metrics. I mean, they're just shutting down the run in every way you can think of. They're fifth in good blocking rate allowed. I remember we talked about in past years that they were terrible. If you did get a good blocking, you were getting big gains. This year, only 6.8 yards when you get good blocking. That's 8th in the league. It's a very good number, very big improvement. So you're not moving the ball against it, and they're first in rush yards before first defensive contact, or rush yards before first defensive contact. So you're only getting 1.2 yards on average on a running play against Philadelphia before the defenders are coming up and making contact. That is tremendous. So Philadelphia doesn't have to worry about the ground game. The thing is, for this game, if you've got such a dominant edge and Minnesota's not blocking worth a darn up front, again, one of the worst teams in the league in run blocking metrics, if I'm Philadelphia, I'm sitting my safeties back. I'm saying, look, I'm going to beat you with my front seven. I know I can do it. You've got a backup running back anyway. I'm just going to play front seven against you the whole time, and I'm going to sit in my shell coverages, do all of that stuff. I don't even worry about ever bringing up the safety. If I'm them, I don't load the box unless even 3rd and 1, I wouldn't necessarily load the box. Just sit your guys back and don't let them do anything deep and say, you're going to have to play a running game for us more than you want to.
So try to make them dink and dunk you.
You have to, yeah. I found them. I don't even worry about stopping the run. I don't do anything play calling to stop the run. No run blitzes or anything. Everything sits back in coverage and says, we're taking the deep ball from you. And I think if they do that, what talent-wise we're going to see out of Philadelphia, we haven't seen so far this year, I think if they can dictate that sort of pace, it'll make a difference. Bad thing is, if they get in the lead, Minnesota's just going to have to sit back and throw anyway. So I'm not saying Philadelphia shouldn't get in the lead, but they may have to sit back and play that anyway. If I'm them, again, don't even try to stop the run. Just do it with your front seven. It can be done in this matchup.
A couple quickies here. Trey Waynes is is out for the game against the Eagles. Concussion, so big loss for them. Dalvin Cook, game time decision at running back. So a poor running attack already, could be more limited if Cook is out. So watch for that. All right, we'll get Casey's pick on that game. What is your key matchup? Where's the one spot in this game that makes you feel that one team's got the advantage of over the other?
The one I'm would be really watching for the game is Mills to see he's going to have to cover somebody, and they've got Thielen and they've got Diggs, who are both just fantastic plays. They're going to both like wide receiver ones in fantasy football this week. It's a tremendous matchup for them, but he just has to do something. I want to see him have a Lito Shepherd game, even if he has to give up a couple plays, but if he can make an interception and offset that, that's all he has to do. Just don't give up too many big plays, and then just make a pick or something, make one big play, he can offset it. I think he could be the difference.
Got 2 Lito Shepherd references this week on this show. I don't know.
I've been listening to Lito Shuffle, man. I must have some boss gags on my upper. I do.
All right, let's get to Week 5's quick hits with KC Joyner here as we'll go down the schedule. He'll give us a quick thought on each of these games as he does every week and who he likes in the matchups. I think there's a couple interesting games. Tennessee's going to Buffalo. Titans win in Philly last week. They got to travel on the road. Buffalo, helter-skelter. They win in Minnesota. They get shut out last week, but they come back home. Tennessee has won 2 in a row. They beat Jacksonville, the AFC runner-up, and the Super Bowl champion. So do they go on the road and beat Buffalo?
I think they'll struggle a little more than people would generally think because Buffalo has a pretty good defense. Their offensive woes are masking the fact they've got a solid defense. But Tennessee's as we've seen, they've got good offense, good defense, and their running game still hasn't got going the way that it can. I think that changes in this game. So I like Tennessee.
All right, 3-1. Miami, Cincinnati. Cincinnati's going to be out without Bernard. Miami lost for just the second time in 12 games with Tannehill under center. They got blitzed by the Patriots. Do they rebound on the road? One of these teams is going to be 4-1. Who will it be?
Miami is a paper tiger. They are not as good as that record would suggest. Their offensive line is blocking horrible. They're one of the worst run-blocking teams in the league. They're not even giving the ball to their running backs anymore. In fact, their coaches being asked about it, and they just lost their starting center, who was already playing terrible anyway. I think that Cincinnati is a much better 3-1 team. I think the Dolphins lose handily.
All right, Baltimore. I like what they did on Sunday night, Monday night, Sunday night. They played Pittsburgh. They're going to Cleveland, who was a tough luck loser last week, but Baltimore starting to feel them a little bit more offensively, some weapons, and better defensively than we thought.
A lot of weapons offensively. John Brown is again, I do fantasy football. I'm getting asked all kinds of questions about John Brown if people are going to start him. He's doing that well. Crabtree's showing up. They might get Hayden Hurst, their first-round draft pick. He might play in his first game this week. They're blocking very well. Flacco's looking good, and Collins is going to play. He was fully healthy today. I just like a lot of things about Baltimore. Cleveland's a good team, but they in some ways, their defense is good, but their blocking is horrible, so Baltimore gets the edge. Green
Bay on the road against Detroit. Detroit, got bombed on opening night. They played much better since then, but are they formidable enough to knock off Aaron Rodgers and the Pack?
I think they might be, because it looks like Allison might be out. Cobb is already out. Adams is banged up. I mean, you might be looking at 3 backup wide receivers, and as good as Aaron Rodgers is, he's not going to beat the Detroit Lions offense with 3 backup receivers. They've got a good running game, and Detroit does not have a good run defense, but I just don't think Green Bay is situated to handle that much for personnel loss. If they lose all those receivers, they're going to lose this game.
Game of the week, Jacksonville, Kansas City. Jacksonville's got to go on the road here, so tougher for them. Kansas City, that offense, very explosive against this great defense. So, who wins out in 2018's version of the NFL, offense or defense?
If this was in Jacksonville, I'd be picking Jacksonville. But at Kansas City at home, I like the edge there, in part because Mahomes showed last week that he can adjust to defenses taking away certain things. The last couple weeks, defenses were taking this away, were taking that away, and he's learning to adjust to that. Jacksonville can make him do some of those things, but they have so many playmakers. I think the game is going to be a lot higher scoring than thought, because Kansas City's defense is terrible, but if it gets in a high score, and that's advantage them. So I'm picking Chiefs.
Denver on the road. They got to travel across the country against the Jets here, who are starting to struggle a little bit after looking really good on opening night. So does Darnold and the Jets get one over on Denver here?
I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. Denver has some of the best run defensive metrics in the league. Also, Denver is one of the best offensive line in the league. I think they rank 4th in my overall blocking metrics. They're able to dominate the game on both sides of the ball there, and they've got more passing weapons. I don't think the Jets, Darnold he's regressed after that Week 1 game. He'll do better down the road, but this is not a matchup that he's going to do better in. So I like Denver.
All right, Giants last week at home, they struggled in the second half in that game against the Saints. Saints pulled away. Carolina, they're always the team no one seems to talk about a lot, but they're right there with just the one loss. They're playing at home. They can get to 4-1 with a win this week against the Giants. Do they get it?
They do, because the Giants, they're very good in coverage. They've got some really good metrics in pass coverage, but their run defense metrics are some of the worst in the league. And Carolina has the #1 rush metrics in my league. They're grayed out first, and I think that it might be another 25 to 30 carry game for Christian McCaffrey, and Carolina wins that handily.
Let's go to L.A., where the Chargers host Oakland. Oakland got a kind of a gift win last week, but now they got to travel on the road. Do they make it 2 in a row against the Chargers, who made it out of September 2-2?
Mentioned that article I read about offensive and defensive line matchups and the best and worst matchups of the week. The Chargers were easily the #1 matchup in their favor. They've got the biggest mismatch against Oakland's front seven. Oakland rated out as an F. And pass rushing, they've graded as an F overall, and they get a D- in run defense and almost at an F there. I think the Chargers will control the ball on both sides and control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball and win that pretty well, handily.
Right. Arizona, San Francisco, not a lot of storylines in this game, but if San Francisco was to get a win, it would be their second of the season. Arizona's still looking for their first.
San Francisco, they run the ball very well. They use a lot of two-back sets, which you usually don't see very much of. And Arizona's got their run defense has looked well in some advanced run metrics, but they can never get the run defense off the field because their offense has only scored 37 points. So I think they're going to keep this game closer. But when San Francisco can run the ball as well as they can, I think that's the edge.
All right, L.A. Rams traveling to Seattle. Typically, Seattle, tough place to play. Not this version of the Seahawks, not quite as tough as previous versions. So can the Seahawks slow down the Rams?
They rank 12th in fantasy points allowed to Seattle does 12th or better in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. So from you're looking at what kind of production they're allowing, and are not allowing much, but then you start looking at the competition and you go, wow, you guys are really doing it against weak competition. The Rams have the best offensive line in football, and they are going to be able to dominate that in a way. I think they're going to just crush Seattle. I love their entire matchup there, and I think, by the way, Russell Wilson, 42 rushing yards this year. He's having an abysmal season. I think it just continues against that Rams defense.
Styles make fights. This could be a TKO. Dallas is on the road. Sunday Night Football will have this game on 97.3 ESPN. They're taking on Houston that finally won last week, put up some points in doing so. So are we looking at a shootout at the OK Corral in Houston?
Houston's got some problems because their offensive line, they've got the worst matchup in the week. They've got their lowest graded matchup of the week. The biggest mismatch for Dallas is front seven because Houston's run blocking isn't bad. Their pass blocking is atrocious. And, Watson's been able to do something with that. He's been able to scramble and hit some big plays. So that you just don't want to lean on that if you can help it. And I like Dallas's. They're running very well, and the ability to control all of that. I think they're going to be able to pull off what I think is kind of an uptick, because Houston actually is a better team in some ways. And if you ask me coming into the season, I would have thought Houston's a better team, and Dallas is such a weak offense. But I think Dallas still going to have enough formula to win this.
All right, Monday Night Football. Hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Redskins go to the Saints. Saints went on the road last week. Now they come back home. This team seems to me, Casey, that they're starting to hit their stride a little bit, starting to look a little better. I wouldn't want to be playing defense on a night where Drew Brees can break records. So does Washington have their hands full on the road in New Orleans?
Washington does have the hands full. The Saints have some fantastic run defense metrics, so that's going to slow down Peterson. Also, New Orleans, the first 2 weeks of the season, had some of the worst run blocking metrics in the league. The last 2 weeks, they have been much better, and they get Ingram back. They want to be a running team. They don't want to be a pass-heavy team. Brees breaks the record, but I think that New Orleans is going to be able to control it via the running game and get back to where they were last year and win this touchdown.
Brady broke the record last night. He threw it to Josh Gordon. Does Gordon finally become a bigger part of that offense moving forward, or has he lost a step?
He caught it in double coverage. If he can beat two people in coverage, I can imagine they can call him open at some point. So when they get other vertical targets, so they can get Hogan to start being vertical, that's going to be a big thing. Do you have to ask him to do that, or can you get him open? I think they'll get him open.
All right, let's get Casey's pick for the Eagles and the Vikings. That game's right here on 97.3 ESPN. The countdown to kickoff with Eitan Shander and Pete Thompson starts at 1 o'clock. It'll lead you into Merrill and Mike at 4:25 with the call on 97.3 ESPN. Casey, who do you like in that one?
Minnesota, they don't have a choice but to try to be a pass-heavy team. It's not what they do well. It's not what they want to do, but everything about this matchup will say they need to do that. It's going to make them one-dimensional. Philadelphia could be two-dimensional. Philly wins.
Philly wins at home, 3-2. That would knock the Vikings down to 1-3-1. KC Joyner, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Don't forget, he's back on Monday recapping all the Week 5 action, and he'll get you a closer look at that Monday Night Football matchup between the Redskins and the Saints. We look forward to that right here on the Sports Bash. Casey, enjoy the football.
Appreciate it, man.